What is typically the longest ride people go on before their 70.3 race?
Well, it's a very common question, and my first response was it just depends on the person, their experience, and their speed. So I like for an advanced athlete training for 70.3, if time allows in their schedule, I like to go, bump them up to about 70 miles. And if they're an advanced athlete, they're going to complete that in about 4 hours. So it also depends on if you're training by time or distance, what your longest ride's going to be. And one of the main reasons, there's two main reasons, is number one, when you do a 70 mile or like a 4 hour ride, that's more than half the time that you're going to be out there for the 70.3. So it's getting the athlete used to just being outside for more than half the duration of their race, as well as, just riding more hours. So, if you've ridden 70 miles, even if you're a beginner, then 56 miles in your mind as well as physically seems that much easier. It's 14 miles. No, it's 24 miles less than 70 miles. So extending the training on the bike gives you a little bit more confidence, and it's just a challenge to make the real thing maybe feel a little bit easier. Also, you can go longer than the race distance on the bike. You don't necessarily want to do that all the time on the run, because running is more impact on your body and you're putting yourself more at risk for injury. So again, the volume on the bike to me is a little bit more critical. If it's a first time athlete who's never ridden or trained for a 70.3 and maybe they've done an Olympic distance, then at least getting them to 56 miles. If they're at 50 miles. If they're at 50 miles, okay, what's another 6? Mm-hmm. And then, I kind of will give an athlete kind of a range. Today's your longest ride of the training period. Go for 50 to 60 miles. Because I think having a range is really good, because 50 to 60 miles on a hilly course could take an athlete 4 or 5 hours, whereas a 50 to 60 mile ride on a flatter course can take an athlete anywhere between 2.5 and 4 hours. So it really does fluctuate depending on the terrain, the experience, and if you're training by time or distance. Me personally, I just like that 70 mile ride before a 70.3.
One thing that it also teaches you, these longer rides, is how to fuel and get nutrition in the longer you ride, so you can pace it out better, I think. So if you are on a 4-hour ride, for example, you kind of plan your route if you're outside of where you're going to stop for new hydration. That's always a key. Where's the closest, gas station or convenience store to top off your water bottles, but also having enough nutrition on your person somewhere to plan it out. That way you don't finish the bike ride hungry. I notice that's an issue for me if I'm doing something.
Yeah, exactly. And something I just thought of, a lot of times, not always, but athletes who train for 70.3 tend to also be training for an Ironman either that year or maybe in the future. Mm-hmm. So when you dangle out that 70-mile ride as they're prepping for a 70.3, it gets them a little bit of experience of, okay, what are these 70-mile plus rides going to feel like when I jump to that 140.6?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's an experience thing. But like I said, if an athlete does not have the time, then I will, maybe make the longest ride 2 to 2.5 hours. And I'll structure more intensity for that athlete to do in a shorter amount of time.
Can we expand on that? Because you and I talked about this in the recent weeks about if you don't have time for your workouts, increase the intensity. And why does that matter? What's the helpful factor on a shorter ride, harder intensity versus I have the full amount of time to do my workout?
Well, any training plan is trying to balance the volume and intensity, the frequency, duration, and intensity level. And again, that's the art of coaching, is trying to help the athletes balance the frequency, intensity, and duration. And so, for like a time-starved athlete who doesn't have the hours to train, maybe they're training for an Ironman or 70.3 in that 8 to 12 hour time range, their program is going to involve more intensity than an athlete who has, 15 to 20 hours to train. So regardless of intensity or duration, you're trying to have the athlete make certain adaptations based on their limiters. An athlete may their limiter, like myself, for example, my endurance is my strength. I've been training for a long time. My limiter is being able to go long and more intensity. So over the last few years, I've been lowering my volume of training and increasing my intensity. So when I decide to train for another 140.6, I have that a little bit strong. I'm a little bit stronger, a little bit faster to be able to extend that further and longer. And so in my mind, again, it's helpful to know the athlete. I wouldn't just tell an athlete, if you can't ride 3 hours today, ride an hour hard, because I want to know, did they ride hard yesterday? Are they going to ride hard the next day? So to guide someone whether to ride shorter and harder or longer just depends on what else they're doing for the week. We had this discussion with your training last week. I knew, based on what we talked about, I knew I could give you good advice by telling you to go harder today rather than longer based on your schedule and based on what you've done up until this point. Mm-hmm. But it's not always that simple. You want to make sure you know the big picture of what the athlete's already doing, because too much intensity could harm an athlete, as well as too much volume can hurt an athlete. It just is so relevant to where they are, their experience, and what they need to adapt.
I think the example for someone to kind of put themselves in my cycling shoes, I may have had a 2.5 hour ride, maybe 3, I can't remember which, and time was a factor. So the suggestion was, after a 15-minute warm-up or 10-minute warm-up, I was going to do a 3 by 20 at a hard intensity. I don't know if it was zone 4 or zone 3, and then have a nice little cool down. And it was a great workout. Mentally, I was able to compartmentalize, this is a short, intense effort, I can nail it. Versus, I can't squeeze in. If I have a 3 hour ride, I feel like I'm shortening myself if I go for 2:15 and it's not quite the full workout. But because it was 2 by 20s and I hit my markers, like, this felt good, and I felt like I had a quality workout.
Yeah, so I recall originally it was like 3 by 30 minutes at zone 3, and we cut that down to 2 or 3 by 20 minutes at a high zone 3, low zone 4. So we kind of kept, with the intention of the workout, we just modified it to fit your schedule. And that's really important to be able to make those adaptations based on, your time and your commitment and what else you have going on in life. It's really important to fit training around your life rather than try to squeeze your life around a training plan.
And that was the follow-up workout, was the 3 by 30s. And again, just because we've all been there, the workout was, I think, a little bit longer. And the question I had for you was about, gosh, I forget exactly what it was, but I ended up doing 3 by 30s at a high intensity, which was hard. But your question for me was, have you been following? It was a 12-week intermediate upper level 70.3 plan. Had I been doing the previous 6-week workout? And I hadn't really been following it, the one we have on Training Peaks. But I've been working out consistently, and I wanted to test myself. And I nailed the workout because I wanted to prove to my coach, Wendy, that I could do it. And I also wanted to see if I could do it. And I think I did it, and it felt great. And so in a way, it built my confidence, and it's very individual, that I am kind of on track where I should be with the plan that we both designed and put together. You created it, but we put together. That, okay, good, I'm on track. I got 6 weeks to go. This is 6.5 weeks. I got 6 weeks to go. I'm okay. I'm where I need to be. Just need to keep on doing the other stuff around it.